Coming up on Arirang News, the South Korean government announces another multi-billion-dollar stimulus package, this time focused on reviving exports and consumption. It'll also help small shop owners and the self-employed. South Korea will be exporting more of its coronavirus test kits due to surging demand abroad. The government will make it easier by cutting regulations and helping local suppliers connect with customers overseas. And Prime Minister Chung Se-kyun says South Korea is temporarily getting rid of its visa-free programs and will no longer issue visas to people coming from countries with travel bans on South Korea. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. South Korea will no longer be issuing visas or waiving visa requirements for countries that ban the entry of its citizens. More than 140 countries have taken such measures. In a pan-government meeting Wednesday, Prime Minister Chung Se-kyun said this is a temporary measure based on reciprocity. Here's part of what he had to say this morning.
While maintaining the basis of openness, the government will boost entry restriction in accordance with reciprocity. The government will also expand entry restriction on foreigners traveling without pressing purposes.
He added that the government will soon decide whether to require people in self-isolation to wear electronic wristbands so they can be tracked more effectively. The COVID-19 pandemic has forced schools here in Korea and around the world to start teaching kids online. In Korea, that's made possible by the country's prowess in technology and its state-of-the-art tech infrastructure. And it could be the way towards more innovative education even after the outbreak. Our Oh Soo-young has more.
A day before classrooms go online in South Korea, education officials are making sure virtual learning will be smooth sailing for thousands of middle and high school seniors. On Wednesday, Education Minister Yoon Eun-hae visited EBS, Korea's education broadcaster, to ensure the platform that facilitates online lectures is ready. This comes amid concerns over reports of unstable connections and the quality of online classes. However, South Korea's former Minister of Education Lee Joo says it's also a chance for Korea to initiate blended education, which combines online and offline learning.
Adaptive online learning software that can help students to have personal learning experience to remember and understand knowledge. And these high-tech tools can reduce the burden of teachers and enable them to provide individual high-touch attention to each student, focusing on active learning and higher order skills.
The former minister says countries like South Korea could leverage digital tools and infrastructure.
Korea is the first country to introduce a 5G network and with world-class smartphone producers. However, according to OECD PISA, Korea showed the lowest level of use of computer in classrooms, indicating very weak partnerships between edutech and ICT companies and schools. So strengthening a public-private partnership in education is, I think, the key strategy of building innovation ecosystem in education.
Cutting-edge solutions in education would also widen access to quality content for students from lower income brackets who can't afford private tutoring. The Education Ministry is lending devices including laptops, tablet PCs and smartphones to students in the lower 50% income bracket to facilitate online learning. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
South Korea has announced another multi-billion-dollar economic relief package, this time to revive the country's main pillars of growth, that is, exports and consumption. Making the announcement, President Moon Jae-in promised all possible measures to speed up the recovery. Kim Min-ji reports.
At the core of the government's $46 billion stimulus package unveiled Wednesday is reviving exports and boosting consumption. During the fourth meeting of the Emergency Economic Council, President Moon Jae-in said the global economy is falling into a severe recession, and the South Korea's export-reliant economy is reeling from a tsunami-like impact.
현재의 어려움을 극복하기 위한 노력을 한층 강화하면서 고용 불안과 기업의 유동성 위기와 같은 앞으로 닥쳐올 수 있는 더 큰 위협에도 대비하겠습니다.
Of the package, over $29 billion will be set aside for trade finance so that exporters don't miss out on opportunities due to a lack of finance or credibility. To revive consumption, more than $14 billion will be used to encourage prepayments and to back a pre-purchase scheme for public institutions. In addition, $1.8 billion will be directed at providing support and expanding incentives for startups and venture companies. There will also be measures to reduce the tax burden on the country's small shop owners, the self-employed, and freelancers.
정부는 힘들고 어려운 기업과 국민들을 위한 버팀목 역할을 충실히 하면서 위기 극복에 필요한 조치들을 언제든지 내놓겠습니다. 가용한 자원을 모두 동원하겠습니다. 과감하고 적극적인 재정 투입도 주저하지 않겠습니다.
The government has already introduced an $80 billion package for the country's self-employed small businesses and medium and large corporations and plans to hand out financial payments to households in the lower 70% income bracket. And with the number of new COVID-19 infections gradually slowing in South Korea, Moon vowed to take continued preemptive measures so as not to mistime the support and to speed up the pace of recovery. 김민지, Arirang News.
The COVID-19 pandemic is hammering South Korea's exports, but the government in these trying times is paving the way for local companies to export more of their virus test kits and other supplies, which are in high demand abroad. Kim Dami has the details.
Turning a challenge into an opportunity, the South Korean government will increase exports of the country's popular coronavirus test kits. In a government briefing on Wednesday, Finance Minister Hong Nam-ki said that the government will expedite the export process of these so-called K-quarantine products that are in high demand worldwide during this pandemic. Those products include the country's hygiene products and medical supplies such as virus test kits. As well as speeding up the customs process, the government will shorten the approval process for emergency use of the test kits and support local production of those kits. Protecting its intellectual property rights, South Korea will also seek international standardization of its COVID-19 diagnosis techniques, such as drive-through testing. It has already exported coronavirus test kits to the United Arab Emirates, Romania, and Colombia. And so far, over 120 countries have requested help or have wanted to import Korean test kits. In addition, to help local firms keep their overseas businesses running smoothly, the government will provide support for video conferencing and online marketing and consulting. The government will increase local video counseling infrastructure from the current 5 locations to almost 90 locations and support counseling with foreign buyers through consulting and translation support. Online consulting, such as through the Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency or KOTRA, will also be expanded to 120 locations. Kim Dami, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Yang Jun-seok, Professor of Economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Yang, thank you for coming on today.
Happy to be here.
Well, tomorrow, Thursday, there's a video conference scheduled between the countries of the OPEC Plus group about possible cuts to oil output. There's resistance to that idea from the U.S. What do you see happening to oil prices?
Okay, well, the fundamental problem is that demand has fallen quite a bit because of the COVID virus. Nobody's flying. Very few people are going out of the house. So the demand has fallen, but the supply has kept up. And the agreement to limit supply between OPEC and Russia is running out. And, well, from the point of view of the suppliers, not necessarily the consumers, it's probably in their best interest to collude on production to maintain a higher price. But from the point of view of individual countries, they want to sell more oil and get more cash because, well, this is a very unstable and scary global economic environment. So some countries, I'm sure, would much rather sell more at a cheaper price and get cash now than try to collude to a higher price and sell less. But another problem in this mix seems to be the American oil producers. If you would remember, originally President Trump said that he came to an agreement between Russia and OPEC to raise the oil prices, reduce production. But apparently that deal fell apart because President Trump's deal involved American producers producing less as well, but American producers are refusing to produce less, and that seems to be a problem that has to do with shale oil companies. Shale oil companies are having a lot of problems right now because shale oil is more expensive than regular oil, and a lot of these oil producers seem to want to drive down the price of oil to a low level so that they can take over and buy shale oil businesses when they get into trouble. So we have a complex mechanics going on with Russia, OPEC, and the American oil companies. And because of that, at least until the COVID virus runs out and until the current overflow storage runs out, I would expect very low oil prices.
Right. Well, as deaths from the coronavirus surge in the U.S., stocks on Wall Street are down slightly. Here in Korea, stocks today were mixed. What's the story in the markets today?
Okay, well, the global markets are still a bit of a roller coaster, but for about last 10 days, it's been generally trending upwards. And I think part of that is because the news hasn't been as bad as people feared 2 weeks ago. We were talking about nightmare scenarios, 200,000 Americans dying or even more. But so far, happily, the numbers have turned out not as bad as we were afraid of about 2 weeks ago. So that, I think, it has something to do with the market optimism at the moment. But also, I think the major part of this is that the governments and the central banks of the advanced countries have basically tried to take on the risk that it has been caused by the COVID virus. The central bank is offering to buy even private bonds, and they are basically supplying unlimited liquidity at this time. So the firms, by exchanging their risky assets with cash, can escape a lot of risk that has been created by COVID. Because a lot of risk has been taken by the government, that has given the room for stocks to go up again. But of course, if there's other bad news coming up, and I think people are also realizing that while COVID virus may go away, the reduced demand may stay around for a while. That's causing, as I said, some of the roller coaster ride. Similarly, in Korea, I think we have that uncertainty as well. But also because things are so unstable at the moment, a lot of foreigners are taking their investment out of Korea, and that accounts for the roller coaster ride that the Korean stock market has been having lately.
Well, now we have this new, yet another stimulus package from the South Korean government. Is this a concern from the point of view of the government's fiscal soundness?
Well, yes, it is, but sometimes you do have to spend the money. And because Korean debt to GDP ratio is 38.1%, we still have some room to maneuver. But we have gone into a very high government deficit, 12 trillion won official government deficit, and if you include the social funds, then it's a deficit of 54.4 trillion won. That's the biggest we had in 10 years since the global financial crisis. So yes, it's excusable that we have this deficit now, but given our demographics, given our spending that will have to increase in the future because of the aging population, we should have some checks and balances in order so that as soon as we get out of the COVID crisis, we try to reduce the amount of deficit that we piled up.
Got it. All right, Professor Young, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your insights today.
Thank you.
Now, with commerce at a virtual standstill because of the coronavirus, the South Korean people are coming together and doing what they're calling good customer campaigns to buy from and support farms, restaurants, and other businesses. Yoon Jung-min has this report.
A local food institute in Gyeonggi-do province has launched a so-called Good Customer campaign to help local farms that have been hit by the impact of COVID-19. As farms supplying fruit or vegetables for school meals have struggled because schools remain closed over coronavirus fears, the institute has begun promoting the farm's products. Fruit and vegetables from the farms are packed in a box and sent to customers instead of schools. Online orders have been sharply increasing.
We have done the campaign 3 times. During the first campaign, we sold more than 6,000 boxes and 16,000 during the second one. This time, we plan to sell 32,000 boxes.
Food suppliers are not the only ones suffering from the pandemic. Other industries, including flower farms and restaurants, have also seen their sales decline.
Around February to March this year, the usually high demand for flowers due to graduations and school events plummeted as these events were canceled or delayed due to the outbreak. To help suffering flower farms, local flower shops have been promoting sales of flowers from the farms at much lower prices.
Small flower shops had hard times, and so did flower farms. The farms were on the verge of abandoning flowers they had cultivated for sales this year. Amid this crisis, we have launched this Good Customer campaign for a win-win situation.
To help restaurants, the South Korean government, including the Ministry of SMEs and Startups, has started to pay restaurants in advance for meals they plan to have in the future. Despite every business having a hard time, the Good Customer campaign is doing what it can to help farmers and small shops to weather the crisis. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
That brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.